Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. This lady is the Outreach Director at the Center for Inquiry Transnational in New York. She is also the Director of African Americans for Humanism and is currently working tirelessly on making reason, reality, a success. And she is here to talk to us today about activism. So please help me welcome Debbie Goddard.
Thank you. It's still early for me, I feel. But thank you for coming so early before the rest of the conference gets going. Maybe it's not early for you. I should be doing better with that because I'm on East Coast time. You'd think, right? And it's good to be up here far away from you so you can't see all the cat fur that's actually on my sweater right now. I swear I cleaned it before I came, but I think they slept in my luggage bag. The one cat's white, so we'll see it later. So I have an exciting topic today. At least I'm very excited about this kind of thing. I do this stuff as part of my job. It's about evidence-based methods for effective activism. I can tell you're all really excited too. So that's good. And this is a pretty new presentation for me. I have a lot of notes. I've been retooling it. I gave it once last year, but it's a topic that I've been thinking about for a long time. Because I'll give you a little bit of background about myself, why I chose this topic, why I'm excited about this kind of issue, before I go into some of the methods that we'll be describing. So, I did some activism in high school. My assistant principal might have called me a troublemaker sometimes, because when I saw something wrong, even though I was a very quiet kid, I tried to do something about it. It's why I lost my scholarship in a Catholic high school. And more stories I won't get into. I didn't necessarily have a way of thinking about my activism to evaluate whether I was going to be effective at changing the thing that I thought was a problem, right? After high school, I got involved with the LGBTQ community in Philadelphia, and that was the first time that I saw sort of organized efforts to change things. I did rallies, I went to City Hall and held signs, we attended vigils, we did demonstrations in different areas, we handed out condoms on campus, all that kind of thing. So that taught me a lot about how to think about taking effective action, not just doing a thing, but doing a thing intentionally so that we can try to change something. So I also got tangentially involved in reproductive rights, activism, some other things. When I discovered, when I was 20 years old, 16 years ago, that there was a free thought movement, that there was a movement dedicated to promoting critical thinking and secularism, church-state separation, I moved all of my volunteer activity, all of my volunteer time, into this free thought movement. I had been interested in studying philosophy because I wanted to teach critical thinking. When I was involved with LGBTQ stuff, like marriage equality is a good one. When we were fighting for marriage equality, the people who are on the other side, right, our kind of cultural opponents, the people on the other side of the issues that we were advocating for, often defended their position by saying it's what they thought the Bible said. You know, why were they against those homosexuals getting together? Well, the Bible says it's wrong. Well, their pastor told them it was wrong. All these kinds of things, right? So I thought at the core that if I helped promote critical thinking, and people could shake some of what I considered bad thinking about these issues, you know, like thinking that what they believe is in the Bible should actually influence policy, then these other issues like reproductive rights and blocks to same-sex equality would disappear because there were no good secular arguments for them. That's why I was so excited to find out that there was a free thought movement. Because again, at the core, I thought we were promoting being better thinkers about these things, and that would lead to change. So when I found the free thought movement, I joined every group within 100 miles of me in Philadelphia, which includes New York City. I probably joined eight different skeptic, free thought, atheist, and humanist groups. I was willing to drive 100 miles west to go to one in Harrisburg, or drive 100 miles north to go to New York City for the New York City atheists. And I learned a lot over 5 or 6 years of volunteering, getting involved in advisory boards and whatnot, working with these groups. Eventually, I was hired by the Center for Inquiry to continue doing that same kind of work, working with local groups, working with campus groups, trying to coordinate efforts across the grassroots level. And when I started working at CFI 10 years ago, I thought that I could get better at my job of being a field organizer by studying philosophy and history, like Enlightenment thinkers, Because the people that I saw in our magazines, the people who I saw speaking at conferences, the sort of fields of expertise that my coworkers had, my colleagues, not just at CFI but in the movement, a lot of the people who were on stages like this one were people who were talking about, historicity of Jesus, or Enlightenment thought, or, Establishment Clause stuff. So I tried to learn those things, thinking that it would make me a better field organizer. And it wasn't until a couple of years in that, and it's kind of embarrassing to recall now, but it wasn't until a couple of years in that I realized that you can study activism and organizing, and there are books out there, and there are weekend courses, and articles online, and you can read about movement history for different other movements, and you can break things down into a method. Like the things that I knew about organizing and activism, I learned from experience. I learned from being involved in a half-dozen groups or more, and seeing things tried, and some of them failed, and some of them worked. So I could bring that with me as knowledge, but I didn't know that I could get books about this stuff. I didn't know that, for example, the labor movement is very well organized. It has these huge, 2-week courses that you can attend, and there are theories of organizing that people debate, and that people, with civil rights stuff, like Rosa Parks was not a solo figure just deciding to sit on a bus one day. Like she went to a training camp in, I think, North Carolina for a week, and they chose her purposely to represent things so that it could be more effective at accomplishing something. And all of this was news to me. And when I learned this, I thought, well, should I not even read about Enlightenment thinkers? I should be studying organizing and activism. And so part of why I'm excited about this, I thought maybe you're like, well, duh, we all know that already, is hey, we can get better at this by studying it, by looking at movements, by learning more about how to take action for change intentionally, by thinking about these things strategically, so that we can be better change agents, right? So we can be more effective activists. I think I'm slightly allergic to Arkansas, so pardon my sniffing. You have trees here, they have blossoms, and Buffalo, New York looks nothing like this right now. It's very, very naked still. So, in our movement, we're really good at talking about big ideas, right? We're good at debating and arguing and studying logic and pointing out fallacies with their original Latin names. What I hope to communicate with this talk is that there's a value to taking these ideas out of the theoretical and putting them into the practical, right? Again, when we think about activism, we need to think about how to do these things strategically. We need to think pragmatically. We have limited time and limited resources, limited energy, and there are a lot of things wrong with the world. We want it to be different than it is, right? So, fortunately, there are things that we can learn. Unfortunately, we're not going to cover them all in 45 minutes, but I hope that this acts as a starting point for some of you, or at least a jump-off point in some good directions, so that you can figure out how to learn more about this as well, and that a couple things stick in your head to help improve your own effectiveness. How does that sound? Good. Yeah, cool. So, I studied philosophy for too long not to do this, but I like to start by defining my terms. Ooh, magic. Because I'll be slinging these out, and I want to make sure that we understand what we're talking about. My mouse was going to bother me. No, it was just the mouse was in my face. So, what is activism? It's easy. Taking action to change something. Now, there are different kinds of activism. We can talk about political activism, social, economic, environmental, on and on. Judicial activism. But basically, it's any time you take an action, anyone takes an action to try to change things. What is organizing? That's a word I use a lot. There's a lot of jargon in organizing land. If you go to organizing-focused conferences, there is a lot of jargon. There are a lot of words like this without necessarily meaning to them. They sound really good. Like we can empower the community. Well, what does that mean? But basically, organizing just means you're getting people together to do something. That's it. Bringing people together to do something. Easy peasy. Why should we be concerned about doing activism? And I don't think I need to go into this here. I mean, maybe you're like, well, you do. I'm not just going to believe you. We need to make the world a better place, but things are messed up, you guys. And I think it's really important that we try to help them be different than they are. And last, what is a campaign? A campaign is basically coordinated action with some goal in mind. If some of you have a business background, I've learned that like 90% of the people here work at Walmart, for example, in different positions. But you might be familiar with some of the structure in this language, but with different words on it. In business, you might talk about a project and project goals, and under a project are tasks, for example. Well, we're going to call it, instead of a project, a campaign. A series of actions coordinated together with some goal in mind. There are advertising campaigns, like we want to sell more Mountain Dew. How do we sell more Mountain Dew, for example? Political campaigns, election campaigns, some of these are short-term, some of these are very long-term. There might not be a time limit on when you want to stop selling more Mountain Dew. An election campaign, though, obviously there are tighter time limits. What I want to get across is that there's a method to making effective campaigns. It's very helpful to follow this framework. Here's the basic structure. Start with a goal. You might call this a vision. It's a big picture. How should the world be different than it is now? Maybe the answer is more people drink Mountain Dew. I like Mountain Dew, it's fine. There are other kinds of things. We'll go through a couple of examples, but it's the big picture thing. They're often a reaction to a specific set of circumstances or a problem that exists. Sometimes they're proactive. You're trying to improve a situation or to shift things in a productive direction so that things don't get worse. Objectives. If you're talking about project management, these would be sort of tasks, right? Objectives are winnable issues. The things that you actually take on with the aim of creating change in line with your goal. And often you divide these up to a primary objective, which is what you base the success of your campaign on, and then secondary objectives, which can be incremental gains important to the campaign. Sometimes they just make us feel good so we continue to be motivated to continue with the campaign. Third is target audience, or target audience if you're talking about different objectives. These should be the people who can affect that change, right? They could be key decision makers like politicians, business owners, people you're counting on to exert pressure on things, the general public, moms, students, doctors. But when you figure out your objectives, you say, who do we need to talk to, or who do we need to have an effect on in order to accomplish these objectives? And that's your target audience. Number 4 is tactics. What do you do? These are the specific actions that you take to carry out your objectives with your target audiences in mind. They're the vehicle that carries your message. And one note about that, often in activism, certainly in the activism I did as a high school student, for example, I engaged in the tactics without necessarily thinking about objectives or target audience. In other words, I did stuff, thinking something's wrong with things. I'm going to do something about it. Here's what I'm going to do. But I wasn't thinking, here's who I'm talking to. Here's how they can change it. I just did the thing. And I see this a lot. It doesn't mean that the thing we're doing is unethical or immoral, but it could probably be more effective if we first think about the things we should do based on who has the power to change things and what we're trying to communicate to them. And fifth is evaluation. And I originally didn't include that on this slide, but I realized over time that putting evaluation into the planning of your campaign is very valuable for constructing a campaign. Because a couple things. The obvious one is when your campaign is over, you want to figure out if you did well or you did poorly. Did you succeed? Did you fail? Are there ways you could have done better? Because hopefully it's not the only activism you ever do. Like, well, I'm done. You know, I'm 35, I did my campaign, period, the end. No, you want to be able to learn from that to get better in the future. But also, when you think about how you're going to evaluate your success later, you can define some metrics, some ways of measuring that success, right? Say you want to hand out things on campus, you want to raise awareness, which is a very, very fuzzy goal. Like, did you raise awareness if you put something on Facebook and 17 people saw it? Well, yeah, look, I'm already putting a number on that. If you're like, well, raising awareness is important, but we want 1,000 people to see that, then you can say at the end, did we succeed at getting 1,000 people to see that? Thinking about how to get 1,000 people to see a thing can help shape your tactics, what you do. So actually, considering how you're going to evaluate the success of your campaign is helpful in your campaign planning stages. Building campaigns like this has helped me and helped people I know in like the outreach department at CFI, for example, to think about the work we do more strategically. I think I've seen a lot of people, not just in my own office place, but in other activist spheres, who have thought it was a success to just put information online. And they didn't think about who was reading it or how they're going to get the word out about this information. They're like, look, we succeeded, the information is out there for everyone to see. But that wasn't enough, I think. We could have done a better job at constructing our campaigns, thinking about what we were trying to accomplish, how to get the word out. And again, you don't need to follow this exactly. You can think about different ways of just asking questions so you're doing your activism intentionally and thoughtfully and strategically. What's the dream? What are we trying to do? How do we think we can do that? Who are we trying to talk to? Why are we trying to talk to those people? Do they have the power to change something? What are we trying to say to them? That kind of comes out of the structure. So I hope even if you're not like, point 4 or 2B, you remember thinking about these kinds of questions when you plan your own activism. So, let's think about a few examples. Whoops, that's not one. Hey, come back. I know all my secrets. So here's an easy one. A limited time campaign with a very specific goal. The problem that exists. Some parents in your community believe that Wi-Fi is harmful to their children. Radiation, right? So these parents are campaigning now to get Wi-Fi removed from schools and from public areas like Starbucks. And you think, hell no, don't take my Wi-Fi away at Starbucks. I need my Wi-Fi at Starbucks. Don't touch my Wi-Fi, but also think of the children. Right? Maybe that resonates better with people. Or maybe you have kids in that school and they're like, no, Wi-Fi is very important. I don't want you to take the Wi-Fi away. So your goal, very simple. Prevent the elimination of Wi-Fi in public spaces, particularly in the schools. Your primary objective? Persuade the school board not to eliminate Wi-Fi. You'll know when you succeeded if you can accomplish that. Your secondary objective? Educate the public, particularly the parents, on the science regarding Wi-Fi radiation. Partly so they stop fighting this, this, and they won't go against your efforts. Who are your target audiences? Well, that's easy. We already talked about the goals we want to accomplish, the objectives. We need to talk to the school board. We need to talk to the parents. And we need to talk to the general public, right? What tactics do you choose from there? Well, how do we talk to the school board? Go to a school board meeting. How do you talk to the parents? I don't know, PTA, parent Facebook group on Facebook, whatever it is. Make a website that's easy to understand and hand out flyers to them, right? Get the word out along parenting networks. Talk to the parents at a soccer game, right? But you know who you're trying to reach and why, and with what kind of messaging. And you might, because we're also talking about the general public, maybe get the newspaper to do an article or send an editorial. And I don't know who reads newspapers, but people read newspapers still. Post it on Facebook. So that's an easy kind of campaign structure that shows you how you can go through this strategy, outline your goals, and how it helps you shape your action. I have two others, and I was going to pick one. One of them is going to be our African Americans for Humanism billboard campaign, how we shaped it and why. But I think I'm going to go with the second one in this context. But look at these beautiful pictures. We put a billboard, you guys. We need a website. But that's not what I'm talking about. We're going to talk about instead the campaign for free expression. Because I think this will resonate with you and give you some meat to chew on. In 2009, I was contacted by a student at a campus group called CFI at Broward College in Florida. He and a couple of other students from different groups across North America wanted to create something that they called Blasphemy Day International. They had picked a day for it, which is September 30th, which would mark at that time the 5th anniversary of the publication of the Danish Muhammad cartoons. Are you familiar with these? Okay, good. If you're not Google, Danish Muhammad cartoons, which I think were published in 2005. So he said, we want to mark this. There are all these challenges to free expression. There are new blasphemy laws coming up. Ireland just passed a blasphemy law. These issues hadn't gone away. We said, let's organize a day to do something about this. And I was like, yeah, I'm really into this. I'm really into free expression issues. You're right, let's do something. He said, we can organize free expression rallies on campuses. It's like, yeah, that's a great idea. It's like, we can do stuff at City Hall. We can do these internationally. Let's get the humanist groups in Ireland to protest there, and it'll be this big international effort. It's like, yeah, this is great. He's like, yeah, I'll change our Facebook photos that day. Maybe use the bomb head Muhammad or something. And I was like, all right, yeah, that'll throw people back to what we're marking the occasion for. And he's like, yeah, we can have rallies outside the state capitol and put up banners with Muhammad fucking a pig. And I was like, okay, I lost you there. Why would we do that? Why are we going to do that? And he's like, well, it's blasphemy. And I was like, yes, that is blasphemy, but why are we going to do that? And I'm imagining in my head, for some reason Texas came to mind. I'm imagining scrappy atheists in Texas rallying outside of the state capitol in Austin with banners and signs, and they have Muhammad on them with pigs and a little CFI logo in the corner. And I was like, no, I was like, who are we talking to? Like, how does that move this forward? That will be the whole focus of our campaign, right? And so as we sort of went back and forth on this, and I thought about the fact that once this is launched, Blasphemy Day International is launched, we have very little ability to control the message, right? This is just going to be like a wild horse on Facebook. And everyone's going to put Muhammad's things, and the message will be lost, I think, depending on who we're trying to talk to and what our messaging is. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with this day? And so we worked at CFI headquarters over the next month or so to really think about who we're trying to talk to and why, what our message is, we ended up building not just information about Blasphemy Day, which we ended up calling International Blasphemy Rights Day, to focus not just on the act of blasphemy, which is fine, but also the fact that blasphemy rights, the right to blaspheme, was under the attack. So we could help control the message and shape the focus there. We also made this whole campaign for free expression website, like a larger campaign. September 30th falls right around Blasphemy Day, Banned Books Week, which is always that last week of September into October. And so I thought, well, there's another free expression issue. People are always banning books. So if people want to do sort of a milder version of something free expression related, they can do Banned Books Week instead. Or we can do Blasphemy Day on September 30th. So we ended up couching it in this whole advocacy and educational campaign and making sure that we had information out there that other people's efforts would point to, but that we wouldn't lose that message, the educational message and the advocacy message. Like, yes, we can blaspheme in Texas, it's not illegal, but in other countries, people are being killed for this, right? We wanted to make sure we kept the international focus on. That's kind of how we framed it. Now, I included some photos in here from a later effort that started called Draw Muhammad Day, which actually CFI did not sponsor. A lot of it was led by student groups in the wake of South Park being banned from showing Muhammad on TV. People said, well, we'll show Ben, whoever that is, we'll put Muhammad's all over our campus all in one day. And these pictures, I think I missed one, are from the University of Wisconsin-Madison group called the Atheist Humanist Agnostics, at the University of Wisconsin. They decided to chop Muhammad. I forget what year this was, maybe 2011? And the Muslim Student Association wasn't happy about it. So they went around and put boxing gloves on them and called them Muhammad Ali's. Which, by the way, I think is a fantastic and clever idea of theirs. So the student group countered back by drawing Muhammad, but being censored, or Hangman Muhammad, like, is this okay? Like, what passes the test? And I'm not presenting this to say, don't do this, this is bad, or heck yeah, this is great. That's not what I'm here to evaluate. What I want to point out is, like, for a campaign like this, there was a day that was started, Draw Muhammad Day. There was something that people were reacting to, which was South Park being banned from showing an image of Muhammad, being censored from that. There's a tactic here, which is, let's draw Muhammad's on our campus. What is not obvious yet is who their target audiences were, target audience was, and what their objectives were. What goals were they trying to accomplish with this? And I'm not going to go into all of that now. I think people have very different ideas about whether this was a good or bad idea based on what they thought they were trying to accomplish. If they thought they were trying to show all Muslims that we can't be stopped, are they doing that by chopping Muhammad's on their campus? If they thought, if 100 student groups do this, Western civilization will stand to the invading Muslims. Well, I'm not sure. The point is that when you look at activism efforts like this, we can think about them strategically, right? When we think about Black Lives Matter actions, is it effective to block roads? We see again the tactic. Do we know what they're trying to accomplish? Can we think about that? Is that helpful in accomplishing that? Occupy everything. Was that effective? We need to identify what their goals were first, right? What were they trying to accomplish? Were they trying to shift the narrative? Were they trying to add 99%, 1% to a dialogue? Were they trying to get Wall Street to collapse? I'm not really sure, actually. But I know the architects of the Occupy movement actually did outline what their goals are. Did they accomplish them? Some people think that they didn't do much. Some people think they did a lot. But we have a way to think about that, right? So how do we learn more about this kind of thing? Again, you can look to other movements. Look at feminist history. What was the feminist movement trying to do in the 1960s? What was the civil rights movement trying to do in the 1960s? What was Martin Luther King trying to do versus what Malcolm X was trying to do, right? What was the March on Selma trying to accomplish? Did it accomplish that? We can look to LGBTQ history and movement organizing. Did ACT UP succeed? If you know what ACT UP is. Did it accomplish its goals? You know? Labor movement stuff, which I'm sort of barely scratching the surface of, but oh my gosh, are they organized. There are a lot of books about labor stuff in Southern California, for example. So there are ways to learn about this. And we do have more and more atheist writers and secular writers who are writing about this kind of thing. You've heard probably the firebrand versus diplomat arguments. Fred Christina writes about this stuff all the time. Hamed Mehta writes about this all the time, the value of a firebrand, the value of a diplomat. Can we work together? Is this harmful to that? Is it harmful to our overall goals? Is it all useful? So there are ways to think about this and learn more about this. We can also learn from political campaigns and advertising campaigns. Are they effective at reaching their target audience? Is there something that they overlooked in their messaging? I learned a heck of a lot from reading about the failure of McDonald's Arch Deluxe. They had a target audience, which was older people. They didn't want McDonald's to just be a kid's thing. They marketed the Arch Deluxe by saying, not your kid's taste or something, I forget what it is now, but they had a bunch of kids doing like yucky faces. And then buy the Arch Deluxe. It failed. Apparently adults don't like being reminded that we're not kids anymore. We don't like thinking our tastes have evolved in that sense, you know? We're not like, oh, I'm a grown-up, so I eat Arch Deluxes now. It makes us feel old. It didn't sell well. So again, like, doing that kind of thing. Of course, marketing, there's lots of research in marketing and advertising. So that's campaigns. Before I go on to the next part, I want to emphasize one point again, and make it explicit, which is that when it comes to activism and organizing, our medium, the main tool that we have to work with, is people. The goal of activism is to change people, to get people to change their beliefs, their values, their attitudes, right? Their behavior. And in doing activism and organizing, we have to work with other people and basically work on other people. And this is why this is so frustrating. Because people are really frustrating. And that includes people we work with and people we work to change. That's the hard part. I mean, that's why people get burned out, and that's why people get really frustrated and mad and aggravated and drop out of this stuff and come back to it. Because people are hard to work with. We can be hard to work with. But it's also what makes this so rewarding. Because we're trying to change the world. We're trying to change the world and make it better for people. Right? The medium is people. So, speaking of people, and how awesome people are, brings me to my second point, which is that brains, which people have, are not so smart. Not smart. They're just squishy weird things in their heads. And they're not built necessarily to be logical and rational, right? We want them to be. We want to think that people are reasonable and that we make good decisions after considering all of the available evidence carefully, right? And I think particularly in this movement, there are times that we fall into that even more. We like to think that we are rational and that our decisions are made after careful consideration of all the facts. We like to think that others can be persuaded after we present them with airtight arguments for this or that, or challenge something else, and we get frustrated when they're not persuaded by this. But we love science. Science shows that people make decisions and carry the beliefs and attitudes that they do for complex reasons. We know this. Emotional reasons, habits that we form, cultural pressures, all kinds of things. And we're very good at justifying our conclusions after they've been drawn for these emotional reasons or habits, social reasons. So if emotions and feelings play a huge role in the choices we make, and as activists, we're trying to get people to change or shift, their beliefs, their values, their attitudes, their behavior, then we need to understand more about all that squishy stuff, about how people actually work. Not just learn how to build airtight logical arguments, but how do people actually work? What's the science on that, right? And that's what I'll be talking about now, just a couple things that hopefully will be few enough that they'll stick in people's heads well, and will be a jump-off point for some of you that might be unfamiliar with this to learn more in the future. So, we want to learn more about how to shift people's behaviors, attitudes, values, etc. Where do we need to look for that? This part is a slide heavier. We need to look to fields that study how people work, like psychology, how do brains work, and sociology, how do people work from a group's perspective, and again, marketing, which does lots of research on how to shift people's behaviors and attitudes. So let's talk about some fun psychology that is also really, really frustrating for how people actually work, that we can learn from to be better activists. In 2008, a study showed that not only do people associate warm people with warm feelings, but also the converse is true. We associate warmth with warm people. What do I mean by that? In this study, which you might have heard of, I saw it pop up in a lot of different places. Let me explain. Imagine this. A person goes in to do some research thing. They know they're signed up for a study. They walk into an environment, and the researcher says, "Oh, thank you for coming." They have a clipboard and a beverage. And they're like, "All right, our testing area is upstairs. Oh, can you hold this for me? And I'll just, mark you off of my list since you're coming in. I'll fill out the paperwork." And they hand the volunteer a beverage. And they go upstairs and they do the actual test, it looks like, right? But actually, no. The test is whether handing them a cold or a hot beverage influences their perspective. The test that they seem to be taking is they're asked to read about a fictional character, and then they're asked to rate that character, or how warm or cold they found that character. And it turned out those who held the hot drink rated that character more warmly. Those who held the cold drink rated that character as a colder person. I think that's hilarious, but that's not all. Holding hot or cold things, being in hot and cold environments also affects your selfishness. So another study they did, they gave the volunteers a therapeutic pad, either a hot pad or a cold pad, a cooling pad. And they asked the volunteers to rate these. So they have to manipulate them and see, do they leave one over, all those kinds of questions. Once they did that, they completed a questionnaire, and then they were offered either a choice of a drink for themselves or a voucher that they could give to a friend. Those who were primed with coldness were more likely to choose a gift for themselves, to be selfish, right? Those who were primed with warmth were more likely to choose a gift for their friend. So this is called priming. And it's ridiculous. And there are a lot of ways that we can think about this in how we can communicate more effectively. If you want to ask, and we know this intuitively, if you want to ask your boss for a raise, you don't go in the day that their water main broke and they couldn't take a shower that morning and they're broken. Because their environment is going to affect their decision making and all this. They're not going to just consider this coolly and rationally. All of these factors of our life, all the factors of our environment, whether we're in pain or not, whether we're cold or warm, affect how we think about the world. So, I'll show you another study. And this is my favorite bunch of things. Like, I can't believe that researchers do this. A group of scientists conducted an experiment. They looked at a cafeteria, and they observed littering behavior, like how many people didn't clean up after themselves in this cafeteria at their school. Then, they hung up posters in random locations. Some days they hung up posters with eyes. Other days, they hung up posters of flowers. And guess what? When they hung up posters with eyes, twice as many people cleaned up after themselves. Twice as many, right? But again, let's see that chart. It's so weird. That's so weird. But that's not all they did. The researchers, oh, I don't have that next one. The researchers then hung up eyes over what's like an honesty box. If you go into a lunchroom kind of situation and there's a box, you can take coffee or candy, but you have to put money in the box. Or imagine they don't tell you how much to put. They're just like, please help pay for coffee. They hung up some eyes over that honesty box. And people paid 3 times more for their coffee when eyes were displayed versus a control image. But there's more. And finally, these researchers crack me up. They're just like, hey, what if we put some eyes on it? What if, there's the thing I don't like. Hey, let's put some eyes on it. So, there were bike thefts on campus. The researchers were like, what if we put some eyes on the bike rack? So they paired this image with a simple anti-theft message. Cycle thieves, we are watching you. Guess what? Bike thefts went down 62%. 62% because of eyes. So I know this doesn't seem like I'm saying, hey, here's how you get better at activism. But think about how people actually work. They didn't teach them, hey, stop stealing bikes. But they stopped people from stealing bikes from those racks by putting some eyes on something. So they changed the situation, and people's behaviors changed, right? And this happens, there's so many different kinds of psychological studies that we can look from this. So how can we use this as activists? Well, at work, we have a leadership conference every summer, and we put out cardboard bins in their recycling buckets. And people are really bad at recycling. We want them to recycle their cans and plastic water bottles. And they weren't doing that, so we put some eyes on it. We were like, please recycle. And I don't know, we weren't measuring carefully if that helped, but I'm going to assume yes. Probably it did, considering, right? It increased recycling rates, that's good for the environment, that's good for us. Speaking about how squishy and weird brains are and how irrational they can be, you notice that I'm showing information about the different studies here and a little chart there when I'm showing you this. Do you know why I'm doing that? Because charts are more persuasive. This chart tells you so. Charts are persuasive. See this big bar? It says charts are more persuasive. And if you don't believe me, check out this one. This chart says so. Charts more persuasive when I have charts on my information than when I have no charts. And actually, this is the exact same information as was on the previous chart, except in a different orientation and with the 1 point after the decimal place. So it looks even more sciencey. And you're more likely to believe me, like, hey, charts work, guys. See? And if you think, well, I'm a good skeptic, I won't fall for your tricky chart shenanigans. Like, I'm too smart for that. I like science. I'm good at this stuff. Well, the research for this study, this specific study, which you see that information, so it was science. The researchers asked the subjects who participated in this study to rate on a scale of 1 to 9 their agreement with the statement, I believe in science. So I assume that a lot of people here would probably agree very much with that statement. Yes, I believe in science pretty strongly. The researchers found something interesting. Those who said that they believe strongly in science were more likely to be swayed by charts and graphs in the information that they read than most others. This is so fun. But also frustrating. This brings it up. So I'll go over a couple other techniques that we can use to think about to be better activists, to be better at communicating our values to other people, to be better at getting people to change their behavior and their attitudes on things. Foot in the door technique. If you ask people to do one small thing for you now, or for a movement now, they're more likely to do a bigger thing later. So for example, if you go to someone and you say, hi, do you support, what is it, something that someone can support? not just a political candidate, but some bill that's coming up. Do you support that? Here's a lawn sign. Can you put this on your lawn? Not that many people will actually put a lawn sign on their lawn. That's a huge commitment. That's a huge bunch of communication to your neighbors and things. But if you say, hi, do you support this issue? Here's a sticker. Can you put the sticker in your window? A little 3x3 sticker. That's not a lot, so people will be more likely to do that. And then you come back 2 weeks later and you say, hi, can we put this lawn sign in your lawn? About the same issue. They're much more likely to put that lawn sign on their lawn. Because now they have that identity that they're a person who supports this issue, and publicly, right? They'll do a big thing later if you get them to do a small thing now. That might be a lapel pin. Donors use this all the time, like political campaigns will be like, donate $5. And once you donate $5, you're more likely to donate more later. So you get them to engage in this behavior and help shift their identity into an identity of someone who supports this thing. Another one, which I know a lot of skeptic types are talking about, the backfire effect. An experiment was done where participants were given news stories, mock news stories, and in each one there'd be one clear piece of misinformation, like WMDs were founded in Iraq, or the Bush tax cuts increased government revenues. And in each of these cases, it's not true. Right after the people read these stories, the researcher said, here's a correction, that wasn't true. Actually, we did not find WMDs in Iraq, or actually, the Bush tax cuts did not increase revenue. And people who agreed or were likely to agree with the first wrong statement, after being presented with a correction, were even more likely to still agree with the wrong statement, even though they were told it was wrong. Especially when those statements were connected to their identity. So conservatives, for example, were more likely to hold on to this not true piece of information that WMDs were found in Iraq, even when they were told, actually, that's not true. Liberals too, but liberals tend to be less likely to accept information that didn't agree with their worldview in the first place. So we can't get out of this. So if these beliefs relate to our identities, then being presented with evidence doesn't necessarily change our beliefs. And I'll talk about this a little more, and then be done soon. Social norms, this is related to this. I actually have a sign. So I'm staying in a hotel here, which we didn't know if it was pronounced a loft or a loft. And if you go to a hotel, you see these signs in the bathroom usually, and they basically want you to reuse your towels. What kinds of things do they usually tell you? Water conservation. Save the environment. Make a green choice is what this one says. Go green. This one actually has a money voucher, but we'll ignore that. Get a $5 voucher or 250 star points. So go green. Save the environment. Reuse your towel. Conserve water. A persuasion researcher, which must be fun, and also probably a bad date, worked with a hotel to make changes to their signs about this to encourage the reuse of towels. The message before said something green, do something for the environment. The persuasion researcher changed this to say, reuse your towel. Most people do. The majority of people who stay at this hotel do. That increased towel reuse by 26%. And when the researcher changed the message to make it even more specific, to say, reuse your towel, a majority of people in room 308, the room you're staying in, reuse their towel. That increased towel reuse even further, 33%. So when people thought that there was an expectation that people like them did a thing, they're more likely to do that thing. They do that with recycling messages all the time. You should recycle, 78% of your neighbors recycle. That makes more people recycle. Again, though, it's not rational, but this is part of how to be effective. And the last example I want to give you before pointing you towards some researchers is social identity. A lot of this has to do, again, with psychology and identity and how we see ourselves. There's a researcher at Yale named Dan Kahn who does a lot of this stuff. It's the Cultural Cognition Project. And he points out that the people who are sort of falling for this, if you want to look at it that way, they're not doing it from ignorance. And often the people who change their behavior are more scientifically literate. You know, they're the ones who are likely to accept the charts and graphs and say, oh yeah, this is good information. They're often also better at rationalizing their perspectives. So Dan Kahan's specialty more recently has been looking at climate change and attitudes on climate change. And one very important thing I learned from him is that before people accept your evidence, they first have to believe that you share their values. So with climate change, let's say there's a businessman in your town, and he owns companies that pollute and contribute to carbon in the atmosphere and cuts down old-growth forests somewhere. And you know that with a few small changes, he can reduce his environmental impact significantly. And you are a dreadlocked hippie who only wears sandals and smells like patchouli and wears t-shirts and bell-bottoms, and you go, get a meeting with him, and you go to him and say, hey, man, you're killing the trees. Like, you're dying. And I love trees, and it's bad. You're doing bad things. And then you say, look at this hockey stick graph. It shows global warming. It's true. Like, this is what it used to be, and now we're here. Like, you can do something about that. But right now you're polluting. Well, that's probably not going to be very effective. It might be, but it probably won't be. There are ways to be more effective in communicating with this businessman. First, find your friend who has a Republican haircut and looks good in his suit. Send that person. Get them to go meet the businessman in his office and say, hello, dear sir, hello. It's nice to meet you. I wanted to talk to you about something very important. Oh, I see you have a picture on your desk. Is that your kid? Oh, those are your kids? How wonderful. I have kids too. And part of what I wanted to talk to you about has to do with my concern for the future that we're contributing to for our children. So you're showing, I share your values. It also has to do with your bottom line. He's a businessman. I assume he's concerned about his bottom line. Look at this hockey stick graph. This shows global warming. This is some of our best evidence for global warming right here. If it gets warmer, it's going to cost you. He's more likely to accept this. The evidence is the same. The data you're showing is the same. But your presentation, if you're showing that he shares values, is going to make him more likely to accept it as true. So, again, I hope showing you some of this stuff and how we think about activism, how we think about communicating our values. You know, we learn stuff in business, we learn stuff in how to give a persuasive talk, right? How to present information in a way that makes people listen, maybe agree more, accept data, if we wanted to present that, can help us be better activists as individuals. The campaign building section that I talked to is about how to sort of organize our efforts and think strategically. So we're not just engaging in tactics, but we're actually taking action intentionally, doing action intentionally. In conclusion, I want to show you a couple of, I don't know what I'm doing, resources that you can use for the future, and I'll be here all weekend, so if you want to ask me for this information later, feel free. I mentioned a skeptical activism manual. This you can find online. It was put together by these wonderful skeptical activists. Maria Desiree, who's a professional labor organizer in Canada, Kate Myers, who's a lawyer. You can find this whole thing online as a PDF. Not only does it go over how to build a campaign, it also talks about messaging. There are worksheets in the back. Very, very handy and free. And they want everyone to use that. This book, which is the first book I read that was basically how to be a better activist as an individual. And it includes a lot of the social psychology stuff I just talked about, like foot in the door technique, some of Dan Kahan's research by Nick Cooney. It's called Change of Heart. Highly recommended. You can also find presentations online, YouTube videos that Nick Cooney has given, if you're interested in that. And this which is a very dense compendium, talks about organizing in a big way. So if you're familiar with some of the theories of organizing, people like Saul Alinsky, how to be a community organizer, what is the role of a leader, how to build a leadership team, the history of feminist movements, how it sets goals and things. This is hefty, but very, very informative. And thank you for listening. I appreciate the time. I really appreciate getting invited here. Again, I'm really excited about this stuff for lots of reasons, but one is that at the core, we are all agents of change. We all have the ability to have an effect on people in the world. I mean, even when I had to drop out of volunteering and group running in Philadelphia, because I was broke out of school and sucked, I was evicted, and I had to deliver pizza full time as one of my 3 jobs. Even in my pizza shop, I talked to people as I folded pizza boxes about things. I mean, these were voters, for example, that I'm talking to, about their attitudes on marriage equality, or whatever it might be. We learned from each other, and I saw that some of their perspectives shifted. A lot of that was, we've never talked about that before. I haven't thought about that before. I'm sure you have those kinds of things, those kinds of experiences all the time. That's part of activism. And there are ways that we can do that better. I think it's very important that we do, that we try to change our world. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Debbie. Did you guys get some good information out of that? It was awesome. I'm still thinking about Muhammad and pigs, but seriously, Debbie actually has a table outside, and she's got a lot of great stuff, so if you guys want to go out there at some point, get a chance to visit with her. We're actually going to have maybe a quick 3-minute break, so if you guys need to use the bathroom, or if you want to swarm Debbie all at once to ask her some questions, you have about 3 minutes to do that. Make sure you're back here in exactly 3 minutes at 11 o'clock. We're going to have Daryl Ray speaking, and he's going to be talking about a topic I know you guys are all going to be interested in, sex, and religion and politics and some other stuff, but sex. So make sure you're here in 3 minutes.